let me just record this major six diminished scale thing for you. Might be of some use. And this is how I'll break it down. Simple as can be. You've got your C6 chord, C, E, G, A. That's C6. 1, 3, 5, 6. And if you look at the notes in that chord, C, E, G, A, they're the same notes as open A, C, E, G. What does that spell? That spells an A minor chord. So that tells you that your C6 chord is the same as your A minor chord, the related minor. Related minor, down, semitone, tone, down the minor third. So that should break a few things down for you. That's why people can quite comfortably and easily substitute chord 6 when they're playing over chord 1. When you get into the realm of 6 chords, aside from the fact that it has a pretty nice sound to it as well. So C6 and A minor 7 are the same chord essentially. So when it comes to the 6 diminished, that C6 chord and the notes in it is half of what makes up the C major diminished scale. So basically you have 1, 2, 3, 4 notes, C, E, G, A, and then the other half of the 6 diminished scale is the diminished chord. So in this case, I'll explain it as, say your chord 1 is C6, and then you got the scale to chord 2, that would be in C major, that would be D minor, D minor 7, but in this case, we're gonna lower the 5th, and we're gonna lower the 7th and make it a diminished chord. So we'll say D diminished. So you've got these two chords, C major 6 and D diminished 7. Now that's not the best way to explain how you can come about how the 6 diminished scale is made up and the chords within it. It's just a good way for me to break it down so you can learn to play it. Coming back to the 6 diminished scale, it's really just adding the flattened 6. So you've got the C major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. To make it a 6 diminished scale, you'll play C, D, E, F, G. Instead of going to A, there's always a note between the 5 and the 6. Instead of going straight to the A, you'll go to A flat, A, B, C. So that's the 6 diminished scale. It's just C, B, A flat, G, F, E, D, C. It's just your major scale with a note between the 5th and the 6th degree of the scale. So if you're doing it in F, you add a note between the 5th and the 6th degree. 5, flat and 6, 6, 7, 1. If you're in E, 4, 5, flat and 6, 6, 7, 1. That's literally all it is. And adding that flattened 6 is what gives you the 6th, the diminished chord, which you add to the major 6 chord, which allows you to play the chord scale of the 6 diminished scale. So coming back to C major 6, I'm playing it as playing them as 4-note chords. What I'll do this time is I'll go down a semitone to the 7 and play that as a diminished. The 7th of every major key would normally be a half diminished. In this case, we'll make it a diminished. The reason being, every diminished chord has an inversion which is exactly the same chord type as the root. So if you know your diminished chords, you'll know that they are symmetrical. It's a symmetrical chord, as in it's completely balances. Every part of it is a mirror image to the other part. So if I was to play B diminished, and then the second note in B diminished is D, the notes and the intervals are going to be exactly the same as in B diminished. So if I play this shape for B diminished, I can just move to the next chord note, make it the root, and I've got D diminished, move up a minor third, because diminished chords are minor thirds stacked on each other. Minor third, 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 minor third. Just moving that's all the same diminished chord. So if it's B and it's a 4-note chord, B diminished 7, there's 4 movements. You've got B, D, F, A flat, B, D, F, A flat. So they're all minor thirds. Whether you go up or down, they're all minor thirds apart from each interval. So when you're playing them as inversions, unlike other non-symmetrical chord types, all the intervals are the same. So B diminished, upper third to the third of B diminished to the minor third will be exactly the same intervals that I'm using to play this chord. In the D, and then if I go to the F, it's the same intervals. And if I go to the A flat, same intervals. So basically, with the diminished chord, you've got four diminished chords for every diminished chord when you play inversions. So essentially, you're only really learning 3 diminished chords in all 12 diminished chords, because every one of them, each one of the 3 of them are related. So if I play my B, D, F, A flat, they're all the same chord. If I play my C, go up semitone, C, E flat, F sharp, A, they're all the same notes. And again, if I go to the D flat, C sharp, again, into all of those inversions, all of those positions of the chord are the same chord. So you're only really practicing 3 diminished chords, and you've practiced all your diminished chords. Okay, I've gone around the houses a bit, so now I'm going to come right back to the 6 diminished chord scale and playing it in C. Your first chord is C6, and I'm playing it 1, 5, 6, 3 up an octave, which is the 10th. So 1, 5, 3, and the 3rd up an octave, a 10th. That's the voicing I'm using. And then my next chord would be D, as the chords in C major, playing up C major, although now we're playing the C6 diminished scale. So that would be D minor. And after doing that, I'm going to go back to the beginning and break it down to you. You're only really playing 2 chords for the whole 6 diminished scale. You're playing in this case, in C major or C6 diminished scale, you're playing C6 and all its inversions. So the next one would be the A minor, and then the inversion on the 5th, which is the same notes as in C6, same notes as in second inversion of first inversion of C6, and same notes as in second inversion, and then your third inversion, same notes. So notes would be C, G, A, E, and then here we've got E, A, C, G, same notes, and then G, C, E, A, same notes, and then A, which is A minor 7, A, E, G, C. So they're all the same chord, but you're playing the inversions, gives you 4 movements. Now, if you add the diminished chord to it, in the same 6 diminished scale, you're going to have, again, 3 inversions: root position, first inversion, second inversion, third inversion. Gives you 4 chords, 4 chord voicings, 4 movements. So when you put the 2 together, you put your root position of C major 6, and then you go up to up the scale, going up the scale. Your next one would be a D something. In this case, it would be diminished, because you're only really playing a C6 and its inversions, and a diminished D minor and all its inversions. That's what you're playing going up the scale. You're just playing 2 chords and the inversions of them. That's what makes up the 6 diminished scale. So C major 6, D diminished, C major 6 with the first inversion, which is really an A minor 7 with the 5th in the bass, and then your F would be your diminished again, which is the first inversion of your D diminished, and then your fifth chord, which would be again, which is C major 6 with the 5th in the bass. And then remember, between the 5 and 6 you always have a extra note. So this will be the second inversion of the D diminished. So that's D, F, A flat. Then the next note in the scale would be A. That's chord 6, which is A minor 7, which is the again another inversion of C6. And then chord 7, which would be B, C, your 7th chord, where you completed the scale. Again, is a diminished because it's just the 3rd inversion of D diminished. B, A flat, F, D diminished. You're just playing inversions. And then you're back to where you started, C major 6. So that's the 6 diminished scale. So now I'm going to play it coming down, just voicing the chords. That's your 6 diminished scale in chords. And when you're comping, you're just moving on that scale. Whatever you're hearing in the context of the piece. So if you've got a melody and the melody has notes from that scale in it, and you want to harmonize it with your sixth diminished, if you know what sixth diminished, what key you're in and what sixth diminished scale you're going to be playing, then you can just, using your ears, comp going up the scale and down using those chords from the scale. What have we got? Let's think of something. EastEnders. Okay, let's try that. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4. That's how you play your voice melody, because you're playing the same melody notes, except you're adding the harmonic notes, the chords, below those melody notes by using the sixth diminished scale, which has all the related chords. It sounds right, and it saves you time having to think of the notes that you're playing, because you know it already works and you would have already practiced it. So and you don't even have to play all of the notes, as in the 4-note chord. You might just use some of it. You might just use 6, 5, sorry. EastEnders theme tune. So anyway, basically that's your sixth diminished scale. Major sixth, diminished, major sixth inversion, diminished, major sixth inversion, diminished, major sixth inversion, diminished, major sixth inversion, diminished, major sixth, diminished, major sixth, diminished, major sixth, diminished, back to major sixth. Repetition. You're only playing 2 chords. Diminished, 6. That's why they call it a sixth diminished scale, because you play the 6th chord, then you play the diminished chord. 6th, diminished. 6th, diminished. 6th, diminished. Took me a while to understand that breakdown. 6th, diminished. 6th, diminished. 6th, diminished. 6th, diminished. 6th, diminished. 6th, diminished scale. So it's literally the name of the scale is telling you what the chords are that make up the scale. You play a 6th chord, then you play a diminished chord, as in 6th diminished scale. You play it as a scale of chords. The scale of chords is made up by starting with your 6th, then the diminished. 6th diminished, diminished, 6th diminished. Literally, it can't get any more clearer than that. Like I said, it took me a while to actually hear it broken down in that way. It was one of those videos where somebody just broke it down as clear as daylight. Your 6th chord, and then your followed by your diminished chord. That's your 6th diminished scale. It's almost hard to forget it like that. And I hope that breakdown makes some kind of sense. If you sit down, you first play your major 6th chord, and you go up a step, and you play your diminished chord. Then you go up another step, then you play your sixth chord, but your next inversion of the sixth chord, just the next inversion up, whatever that is, whichever voice you choose to use. Then you play your next inversion of your diminished chord, which is exactly the same because all the diminished chords are the same note groupings for every inversion. And then you play your next inversion of your sixth chord, and then remember, between the 5 and the 6 there's always a note. That's your diminished, and again 6, diminished, 6. Another way I used to practice this was the way I showed you to begin with, where I just played the inversions of the sixth chord up and down to get used to just those inversions, just those movements. Then I played the inversions of the diminished chord, just the inversions of the diminished chord to get comfortable with it. And then when you are comfortable with your fingering and you know the fingering for all your inversions of the diminished chord and of your sixth chord, then you put the two together. Your diminished chord, your sixth chord, your diminished chord, your sixth chord. So that's all it is. You're pairing two chords played in inversions and you're putting them together. That makes your sixth diminished chord. In terms of scale, if you take the notes root, third, 5, 6, take those notes and you add them to the root, third, 5th, diminished 7th of your root, third, 5th, diminished 7th, root, third, flat and 5th, yeah, diminished 7th of your diminished chord. You put those 4 notes, which is B, D, F, A flat with C, E, G, A. You put those 2 groups of notes together, they give you these notes. They give you the notes of the sixth diminished scale. Have fun.